Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you cast your mind back to late 2019, you were probably sitting at home full of hope for the year that was to come. If you were then visited by a time traveler that told you all the things that were going to happen in 2020, you'd probably think they were a little bit nuts. If they then told you that Toyota was actually going to release a Yaris that was not only fun to drive but in huge demand, you'd think they were positively crazy. The thing is though, that's exactly what happened. The Yaris GR is powered by a 1.6 litre, 3-cylinder motor, making 200 kilowatts of power and 370 newton meters of torque. Power is sent to the ground via a 6-speed manual box, mated to an all-wheel drive drivetrain that can send up to 70% of available power to the rear wheels. 4-pot brakes up front, a body design that commands attention, and knowing that it exists so Toyota can go racing means that the Yaris GR is a car that has plenty of attention and hype aimed squarely at it. And thanks to Cameron from Sunday Motors, I get to find out what it's like to drive the Yaris GR, a car which is probably one of the most hyped in recent years. So it's going to be interesting to see what it's actually like to get behind the wheel and spend some time with the GR. And one of the first things you do upon getting in any car is have a look at the interior. I thought the Yaris GR's interior might be a little bit naff, you know, that might have been the area where they saved a lot of money and really cheapened out on the materials, but I've been pleasantly surprised that the materials you interact with are all really good quality. So the steering wheel is a nice chunky soft leather unit, you have a nice soft leather handbrake, the gear shift is really nice to use, you've got Alcantara on the door cards which is really nice, and just it means that this car doesn't feel like it's been sacrificed, or the interior has been sacrificed I should say. These seats are really comfy. They're nice and snug, they've got big bolsters, but it's not over the top, it's not obtrusive. You know, you don't feel like in a couple of hours time your back's going to be done in. This actually does feel like a seating position that you could hold for hours on end. And moves on to another part of the car, the NVH is so low in this car. I mean, I'm rolling along here at 100 kilometers an hour. It's not the best tarmac, but it's not too bad. But the cabin is just really nice and quiet and comfortable. Once again, this doesn't feel like it's going to be a fatiguing car to drive. I sort of thought that the Yaris, the way it was portrayed in the media, it was going to be a little bit hardcore, a little bit unforgiving, but even down to the suspension is nice and supple, and it's really soaked up the roads that I've been driving on today, and especially on our highways. Even though it might be ticking over at say 3,000 RPM, it's just purring along. The cabin, as I said, is really quiet, really comfortable. So even though we're going to get to performance later on, as far as being a Grand Tourer goes, or if you think that you're going to need to do highway trips in the Yaris, I can tell you it'll handle it really well. Now the engine and the drivetrain are obviously the two big draw cards of the Yaris GR. We've got a 1.6 litre 3-cylinder turbo up front, we have a manual gearbox in the middle here, and then we have 4-wheel drive. And it has been a real pleasure to row through the gears and use this drivetrain, because whilst you can't slam through the gears with any real pace, you need to sort of dance with the gearbox and allow it to come to you a little bit. It's a really intuitive car to use. So the clutch has a little bit more heft to it than you may expect, but once again, it's nothing over the top, and it's certainly nothing that takes away from the experience of the Yaris. More so, it adds to it and just gives it that feeling of specialness, if that makes any sense, that this is a purpose-built car to be able to perform really well, but you can just use it so easily. Now I'm approaching this car from the viewpoint of, would it make a good daily? Because in my current circumstance, if this was my car, it would have to be my daily, it would have to be the car that I would take to the track. Essentially, it would be a replacement for my MX-5 in every way. And that does come down to practicality. And this might be a sore point for some, because in the cabin there's tons of cubby holes, there's storage points galore. However, when it comes to boot space, there's not a great deal. I was actually quite surprised when I put all my camera gear in the back. It doesn't feel like it's any better than the MX-5. It might be very similar, or potentially even less. I'm not 100% sure. But if you're someone who's going to cart a dog around, a bike, or whatever the case, or carry a lot of stuff with you, you may need to rethink. Now, you do have 2 seats behind you, which you can fit your children, or potentially people that you don't really like all that much, but I think it would be a stretch to really fit adults in there. I suppose you could just use it as another parcel shelf, which might get around the small boot. Now, performance-wise, this car has been just amazing. It just feels like it has torque on tap at any revs, any speed, any gear. You just put your foot down, bang, it's gone. The turbo spools up and off you hop. And speaking of turbos, the sound of this car it just makes you smile. When you get in it, you got a real nice growl and rumble. It makes choo-choo noises, which is always good. But once again, it adds to the playful character of this car. I'm sure it's basically faked piped in sound, but I really don't care. It matches the theme of this car. So once again, Toyota have done a great job of making this car just fun and enjoyable to drive. Now, if I had to pick 3 things that I love about this car, number 1 has to be the looks. I think Toyota has just absolutely nailed every aspect of the Yaris GR. It just looks like a chunky little nugget. And even when you're driving the car, if you look in your side mirrors, you can see the rear fender flares sitting out there. It just looks awesome. I think from any angle, this car is an absolute stunner. Number 2 has to be the performance and the way that it drives. For me, the sounds, the way it builds speed, the fact that from any RPM in any gear, you can just put your foot down and it goes. It is just so much fun to row through the gears and use all the power that's available. And number 3 is the fact that it exists at all. I know it's a strange thing to say, but with the current climate, cars are just getting a little bit more placid, a little bit more dull year on year. So it's awesome that Toyota has come out and released a car that is purely for fun. And I think that manufacturers should get applauded for doing so. 3 things that I don't like. Number 1 is the visibility. Now, side visibility is not too bad. What I'm talking about is that the rake of the windscreen is pretty severe. Then with how much real estate is taken up with the rear view mirror and then the center console, it means you've got quite a narrow aperture to look over to the passenger side of the car. So if you're just trying to see where your front wheel is, or perhaps there's a cyclist or another car in another lane, you're going to merge, whatever the case is, it doesn't stop you from being able to see what's over there, but it certainly takes some getting used to. Number 2 is how high it revs on the highway. So sitting at 110 k's an hour, it sits at about 3,000 RPM, which in stock form is fine. The cabin is nice and quiet, it's not a problem at all. But I imagine people are going to put exhaust on these, and I can't imagine it's going to be all that pleasant once you do. I feel like it's going to be drone and boom city. The third thing is the fact that every single Commodore owner wants a race. It's insane. I've only been driving this car for a few hours today, and every single set of lights I get to with a Commodore, without fail, they want to have a race. It's just insane. Now, this isn't my car, so I'm not going to do that. Plus, it's just not worth it. But it kind of gets irritating, and I imagine that if that's your daily experience, that's going to get pretty annoying pretty quickly. So thank you so much for watching, and once again, big thank you to Cameron from Sunday Motors for allowing me to borrow his Yaris for the day. It was really awesome to get behind the wheel and see what it was actually like rather than just reading the hype on the internet. It's amazing that this actually does live up to all the hype and so much more. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you're someone who's thinking of getting a Yaris as a daily driver, drop a comment down below and let us know what you're thinking. If you're someone who already has a Yaris, congratulations. And as always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video.